Today we're joined by Christine. She's a postgraduate studying in management, but with a focus on the arts industry. Thanks for joining us, Christine.
Hello.
Uh, could you perhaps start off just by giving us a brief overview about your research and also what got you interested in it?
Yes. So since I have a bachelor's degree in art and art history, I decided to pursue a master's in management because I want to own my own gallery at some point. So this is actually the reason why I chose to look at the art markets as my thesis topic. So what I'll be looking at more in depth is how are prices formed in the upper echelons of the art markets. So like paintings that are being sold at Sotheby's and Christie's for hundreds of millions. And that will be the main focus of my dissertation.
Right. Yeah, perhaps it would be useful for people listening just sort of give a bit more context about sort of the art world more generally. I know even for myself, right, I don't really understand the art market too much. I hear a lot about, these huge price tags being put on paintings and stuff, but how does it usually work? Is it a lot of individual buyers buying from these big galleries? Is it a lot of museums selling? What's the overall context?
Yeah, it's a very secretive world actually. That's probably why you and many other people don't know much about it. And if you're not in that sphere, most likely you don't know what's happening behind the closed doors of Sotheby's, Christie's, and well, those are the two big auction houses where those sales happen mainly. So normally the way it works is right now art is seen as an investment asset to a large extent. So, but it's a very risky investment asset because, as I said, it's very vague how prices are formed. So, the average investor would not know if he buys a painting today for 100 millions, how much is it going to cost in a year? Is it going to be worthless? Because that's a possibility as well, and it has happened before. Or is the price going to increase a lot? So
Right.
how it normally works is that you would have art advisors who are familiar with people in the sphere, and they will guide you what to buy, what not to buy, how much you should pay for it. So it's really a world where you can enter by knowing lots of people,
Right.
and frankly, not everyone is allowed in.
Right, and I guess that's why it gets the reputation of being sort of a higher class sort of thing because I'm guessing it requires sort of a high investment to be able to sort of get started in it.
Yeah. Yeah, you do
Hmm.
need a very, very large investment um, to invest in art. Really, I mean, you can buy paintings that are not worth a lot, and you can
Hmm.
buy them as a decoration for your house. But this would not really be qualified as an art investment.
Right. Okay. And you sort of mentioned how there's sort of a lot of art advisors that sort of help guide people with pricing and sort of the things to look for. Could you speak a bit about what they're looking for when they're looking at art? I know some of your research is looking at this intrinsic value versus sort of social value, but perhaps some of just the key pointers in that sense. So perhaps looking at the different artists, the strokes, stuff like this. What do they tend to look for?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. Because normally the art advisors they don't look for intrinsic value, like intrinsic beauty, because
Right.
that's not really a factor that forms price. I mean, there have been researches that look at the different themes of paintings and how those themes affect the prices. However, for different markets, for different countries, it's different. So we cannot conclude that I don't know, paintings of landscapes are worth more than paintings of people.
Mm,
So the way really prices are formed is, as many other researchers have wrote, are formed by those gatekeepers of the art market. That are those are the some famous curators, and two auction houses in particular, those being Christie's and Sotheby's. Um, and those are the people that form the prices. But how they
right.
form the prices does not, so far my research has shown that it does not, it's not influenced um, by the beauty of the painting, by the aesthetics of the painting. This is something very
Mm,
subjective anyways. So it's
right.
more about the fame of the artist. This plays a very big role. um, but yeah.
Right. Is that sort of the core of your research there, is sort of looking at um, whether or not art can have intrinsic value and then looking at sort of the things that influence it? Is that sort of the core of the research?
Yes, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
this is part of the course. So,
Mm,
what I'll be incorporating in this art price valuation would be the theory of Gustav Le Bon, who wrote the book called The Crowd, the psychology
mm,
of the crowds. So he looks at the concept of herding behavior and social proof. So I'll relate his concept to the art market. And what I really want to understand is how can a few people and very few institutions dictate uh, prices, very high prices, and people would just accept them, and
mm,
how those institutions, they would say that a painting is worth, let's say, 500 million, and this painting would be seen as extremely valuable by everyone, by the average people, because someone said that this painting costs a lot. So that instantly means that it's very, very valuable.
right.
And like, where can this go? Are those people going to, do they dictate the tastes of people? So if they tell us that
Mm,
something is valued at a very high price, then then the average person should think that this is what valuable art is.
yeah. Yeah, it's that is quite interesting. It's sort of how perhaps institutions can shape economic pricing and sort of do they also use that for their advantage? Is that part of what you're looking at? Is then how do they, sort of use dictate sort of the crowd think to price up economic value and then use that for their own benefits? Is that part of it?
Absolutely.
Okay, interesting.
This is what I think. Of course, my research has not gone that far so that I can speak with a particular proof, but this is the logical outcome of it, is that if
Mm,
I can dictate prices and everyone would comply with those prices, then
right.
I can put higher prices for artists and styles and in general types of art that I want to promote, and then
Mm.
have lower prices and make the value seem less valuable for art that I do not want to promote.
Right. Yeah, I think that that'd be quite an interesting thing to go in a bit more detail later on. But perhaps let's take a step back. You said you're sort of using the crowd to apply that into the art world. Um, could you give a bit more understanding to what the crowd speaks about and sort of the core understandings of what it's talking about there? Because I'm assuming, is the crowd, is that in an art world already, or is that sort of a little bit separate from art, and then you're using that and applying it to art?
Oh, it's completely separate. It has absolutely
Right.
nothing to do with the art
Mm-hmm.
world. The book was written. I think he's a French sociologist, and he wrote the book in the beginning of the 20th century. So it was all about how when individuals enter a crowd, they they partially lose their identity, and they're more willing to comply with the opinion of someone who stands out as a leader, because in a group of people you always have one person who would stand out as a leader. So when you're in a crowd, when you're with other people, you are more willing to comply with their opinion, and it's normally a single opinion. um, I want to
Right.
see how this can be applied to the art pricing, because to a large extent it seems to me like it's a crowd, and there are few dictators of opinion that influence everybody else.
Yeah, and I think it's especially interesting in the art world since, as we've sort of alluded to already, a lot of the pricing there isn't necessarily based on intrinsic value. So on something that is so sort of influenced by subjectiveness and opinions, it's quite interesting in how their elite opinions could impact that. Yeah. So then going into that a little bit more, what have you found so far um, that has shown you that there isn't really intrinsic value? Are there sort of pieces or big fluctuations in price that have sort of been interesting to you, or that have a little bit stood out to you in a way that sort of makes you raise an eyebrow, like why is that this painting is priced at this amount, etc.?
Yes, there are many such paintings and pieces of art. I believe it was last year or 2 years ago, there was an invisible sculpture sold for $18,000, which was just astonishing to me because it was invisible, in fact.
So was it just nothing?
Yes.
It was just nothing.
Yes, and it was called contemporary art. Um, so yeah, I mean, there are examples like this that are really in the extreme. But what I find particularly interesting when talking about intrinsic value, and my opinion is forming at the moment that intrinsic value does not really matter for the way art is priced, is because I don't know if you're aware of this. Actually, a few people are aware of this, that when those really high value paintings are sold at auctions, the person who bought them does almost never takes them home and, I don't know, puts them in their living room or in their house
Right.
at all. So those paintings, they stay at those so-called free ports in containers, and they stay there until they're normally resold again. And oftentimes they're being resold, and they don't leave those free ports. They just
Right.
change the owner. So no one ever sees those paintings, because
So
because taking the painting to a different country would cost a lot. The tax would be very high, and you would also need to pay yearly tax on that painting if you were to have it at your house. So that just makes it a much more expensive investment than if you keep it at a.
is that sort of difficulty of moving and the taxing, is that sort of dictated by the government, or is that dictated also by the auction houses that would do that sort of moving for them?
The taxes are dictated by the government.
Right.
Normally the auction houses, they will do the logistics if you want the painting delivered somewhere. But if it's a very high value painting, I mean above 100 million, for instance, then it is very, very unlikely that you would want that painting transported where
Right.
where you live.
Yeah, that sort of also raises two questions for me. So one that sort of makes me think then art, as you sort of said earlier, it's more of an investment piece. And but two, another question, and something I hear a lot just randomly, is that a lot of high net worth individuals use art as sort of a way to, I don't know, like dodge taxes to some extent, or there's a lot of talk about that. How true is that, and also if so, how does that work, right?
Yeah, that's a very good point. Absolutely, it's an amazing way to dodge taxes because, as I said, you buy it, your money are in this painting, but it stays at a free port. You don't pay taxes on it, so essentially you don't pay taxes on those money.
Mhm.
So yeah, there
Right.
is also a lot of money laundering going on in the art market, and this is why it's actually just kept so secretive because there is a lot of money going through the art market, not always legal, and if it was to be more transparent, then that would make a lot of high value individuals very unhappy.
Right, right. So in that sense, it's a way for people to store value without having to pay taxes on that value on that money. Okay, interesting. Yeah, I can definitely see how if that was exposed a little bit more, that wouldn't be to the best interest of the people owning the art. That's quite interesting. Um, yeah, so in your own research, you're sort of making the argument that there isn't too much intrinsic value on art pieces. Is that correct?
Yeah, because if you're
Mm-hmm.
just buying a painting, as you said, to avoid taxes, to keep it as an investment that would increase in value, then you don't really
Mm-hmm.
care what's painted on this painting or what this
Mm-hmm.
sculpture represents, because most of the times you don't even see it.
Right,
Um,
right.
and
Interesting.
I feel like this is contributing to a sort of a downfall of art because it
Mm-hmm.
has become a tangible asset, and art has never really been a tangible asset because the whole value of art is because it makes you feel something, because it has an impact on you. And when you turn it into a piece of paper or a canvas with some paint on it, it's really worthless then.
Right. Sort of taking away that sort of like spiritual or emotional connection that people have to art and sort of making an economic thing. Yeah, I agree. It is a bit of a shame. You know, how are these art galleries and sort of dictators of price doing that? Do they sort of, I don't know, I don't understand it, but do they sort of like artificially tack on prices? Does it slowly sort of increase over time? What are some of the strategies or ways that they're able to dictate price to such a heavy extent?
Yeah, well, probably the biggest factor is that they have been around for many, many years, for centuries. So people trust them. They're reliable. They show results. Individuals have increased their wealth by collaborating with them. Um, so yeah, they have the
Right.
trust of people, and this is why they can, whatever they say, it's um it's what goes. It's like big fashion brands. If I don't know, Gucci tells you that something is fashionable, you would think that this is fashionable because it's them saying it.
Right.
So it's just the trust that they have built for many, many years, for hundreds of years, that yeah.
And then could you speak a bit more about then how the crowd relates to that from perhaps a bit more of like a social perspective, where you sort of say once someone dictates a price, it's sort of harder for someone, sort of like individuals in the crowd to have a bit of free think. Could you speak on that a little bit more, and what you found, how those sort of tie together between the art world and the book?
Yeah. Um, yeah, well, even like not talking about investment, but art in general and how it's perceived by the general public. Um, if if you know that a Rothko painting, it's worth 50, 100 million, 200 million, and this is the average price of a Rothko painting, you think that Rothko
Crazy.
is a great artist and that his art is extremely valuable, and he becomes a benchmark for you. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, anything that is like close to Rothko, then it will be good art.
Mm-hmm.
um, and you don't really question that because why would you question it? It's
Mm-hmm.
everywhere. If it's worth so much, then it should be good. It's the way we're kind of
Yeah.
taught to think, and you don't spend time really thinking. But who determines the price? Why is the price so high? Uh, you
Mm-hmm.
just go with the flow because some very prestigious institutions tell you that. And this is
Mm-hmm.
how it relates with Gustav Le Bon's herding behavior. It's because people in the crowd, they don't really question the leader.
Mm-hmm.
They
Right.
just go with it because the leader is he looks good, he's well put together, he looks prestigious, he's someone that you're looking up to. So why would you question their opinion?
Right. There's sort of the lack of need to question something since, especially in the art world, like you said, they're very prestigious institutions. There's no reason to question them, right? Because they've been long-standing. They're supposed to be for your best interest. Yeah, that's quite interesting. So then, do you think that from your research, these institutions definitely deserve some more questioning and deserve a bit more sort of scrutinization? And if so, in what areas? Like how can perhaps government agencies or just regular people sort of have a bit more scrutinization and thinking behind how they're perhaps manipulating prices.
Yeah. Well, that's a great question. It would be nice if the governmental institutions were more involved in that. However, art has always been a subject that governments don't want to influence too much, because in the past, when governments start to have influence on art, most of those governments have been authoritarian governments,
Mm-hmm.
communist governments. I come from Bulgaria, which used to be communist, and when the government had a say on what art should look like, what art should be priced at, who should buy art, who shouldn't buy art, then this was communism. So I feel like probably many governments are a bit wary of that, and they don't
Interesting.
want to have too much influence
Mm.
on art, because art, in the end of the day, is a way to control people. It's a way to show people what's good, what's not good. Um, so yeah, I don't
Mm-hmm.
think that many governments, especially in free democratic countries, would like to get involved in that, just
Yeah.
because of their reputation.
Yeah, I think that's spot on, right? I think you're right. In a lot of the communist totalitarian countries, one of the first things they do is sort of take control of art and sort of to reduce that freedom of speech there and the freedom of expression. So that's definitely a good point. Then perhaps on an individual level, are there what are the questions that you think people can ask um, in the art world, right? So it's like if I see a painting's just sold for 100 million, on a website, what questions do you think I should be asking or thinking about? Um, yeah, when I read the headline like that, I don't know, the question's a bit phrased poorly, but if you know what I mean.
Oh, yeah, I understand. Well, I think first you should ask why was that painting sold for that much money? It's obviously most probably not worth, like, its intrinsic value. It's not that much. So why was it sold for such an amount? Is it because this is the type of art that someone wants to make popular right now, that someone wants to promote. Um, is it, I think we should just have critical thinking and think, why are certain types of art um, more highly valued at different periods in history? That will probably be the question that we should be asking.
Yeah, for sure. Then and could you speak a bit more to what, like, why do you personally think that some of these gallery houses or auction houses such as Sotheby's, why would they be motivated to increase certain prices of certain types of art? Is it for their own economic benefit? Are there sort of cultural implications? Like, what do you think's their motivation behind that?
Hmm. There is definitely both economic and cultural implications. So, from the economic side, they want to make their clients happy. So, it's in their best interest to promote higher prices on certain types of art, um, in order to show that this is a good investment, that buyers should trust them, because auction houses do get a large chunk of the price that a painting is sold at.
Mm,
Um, Now, culturally, I I'm not too sure why would they want to steer, and if they want to at all, because this is just my hypothesis.
mhm.
I don't have proof behind it. I'm not sure why they would potentially want to steer public opinion in a certain direction. Um, so this is something that I am yet to discover in my research, so I can't really talk too much about it.
Right. Fair enough. So it seems to me then it's more about sort of economic interest for their clients and also potentially for their own um, gallery houses. Hmm. Interesting. You know, something that sort of popped into my head is it doesn't seem plausible to me if sort of the art market is always constantly increasing, right? And I don't know if it is, but to me, it sounds like in most markets, at least sort of in my understanding of economic markets, you know, there's always sort of ebbs and flows, ups and downs. Because if a market sort of is always going up, that seems unsustainable. So, you know, does the market firstly sort of go up and down? Do you see decreases in art prices, and how does that play into the sort of the whole environment?
Yeah. There are at different times there are increases at the price of certain types of art. So, impressionist art or postmodern art. Um, yeah, at certain times, different types of art increase their prices, and other art decreases in price. Um, Overall, has the market always been growing? Well, right now the art market is worth much more than it was worth 10 years ago, and it's just because there is much more capital, free capital in the world, and much more people, much more high value individuals who are able to afford to buy art. So it's this is why it's logical that the value of the whole market has been constantly growing. Um, for now, it hasn't been like there has been a crash of the market or anything like this. This has not happened in I don't know, in the recent 50 years probably.
Right.
There has been times like during the pandemic in 2020 when the art market was not that active. Auctions were only held online, no live auctions. So, but this happened with any other market as well. Um,
Mm.
so yeah,
Right. Right.
it does not fluctuate that much as a whole. It's just different styles, different artists, prices that could fluctuate, although prices in art are shown to be quite stable for the
Hmm.
most part.
Right. And I think it could be interesting to talk about a bit more the individual impacts of what way research might show. I know nowadays there's, I don't know if you've heard of these, but there are these sort of like online websites that sort of allow you to buy a small percentage of a famous painting, right? So you sort of buy just a little bit of money to be able to invest in art as someone that's not a super high net worth individual. Uh, what are your sort of thoughts on that? Would that be a smart investment for sort of an individual to make? Because if you, as you say, if art is sort of a bit more of a stable investment, um, so what are the pros and cons of something like that?
Yeah. Um, yeah, those group funds, mutual funds with art have been quite popular the last few years probably.
Hmm.
And it's rather appealing, as you said, because you don't have to invest a few hundreds of millions.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's more available to most people. Now, the thing is that prices of art, they're not going to increase very rapidly. They will not decrease rapidly either. So it's a very, I personally believe it's a low risk type of investment, investing in a
Mm.
mutual art fund. It's probably not going to bring you a very large return, but you're not going to lose lots of money
Right.
either. So it's rather safe investment,
Hmm.
I'd say. And yeah, it's becoming increasingly popular because even many banks worldwide do have departments that are dedicated to investments in art.
Right. And then, for yourself, is that a bit of a shame? Like, do you view art as it should be more about that emotional connection to it, or because I think the art world, even as we've been speaking, it's sort of become a much more about the economics and a much more about the investment. But do you think it should really be more focused on um, the emotional connection, or so? What are your thoughts?
Yeah. Well, as someone who has studied art and I do paint myself, it's of course for me the value, the highest value of art is its intrinsic value. It's emotional value, the power to have an impact on someone emotionally. This is why art is valuable for me, and this is why art has been valued so highly throughout the centuries. Um, and well, for other reasons as well, because art has always been seen as something prestigious and elitist. So having interest in art, buying art, having a collection of art, uh, this has at certain points in time showed to people that you're an intelligent individual. um, so yeah, art has been important for many different reasons, but I feel like if we lose the and we just completely overlook the emotional impact of value of art, then then it really just loses its value. Then what are we, then what's going to be the value of art?
Mm. Yeah, for sure. I think Christine, that's quite a beautiful way to end the podcast here. I think that was a very nice way to put it. Is there anything else you'd like to add, or anything before we finish it off?
Um, I just want to say that thank you so much for that podcast. It has been lots of fun, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to doing my research and finding out more, and either confirming or disproving my initial thoughts on the art market.
Yeah, for sure. I think definitely really interesting research here. Thank you so much for your time, Christine.
Thank
Thank you.
you.